terlebih dahulu saya ingin ucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada KKM di atas pelawaan untuk HRDF join bersama dalam sesi ini, dan juga kepada Dr. Priya dan juga Dr. Siti Nurbaya di atas perkongsian yang begitu penuh maklumat sebentar tadi ya. So I think without further ado, I just would like to go into my presentation. Perhaps we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, in this presentation, I will be sharing three elements. Yeah, I would also like to take this opportunity to inform and to share everybody on what is HRDF and what do we do, as well as the skill areas that are covered under HRDF and the training grant claimable process. I was told that the focus for today is actually on the tuntutan latihan HRDF. So maybe I will be zooming in more into those areas later on. So just a quick introduction to HRDF. Maybe we can go to the next slides. Thank you. Next slide, please. Actually, HRDF is we are not new. We have been incorporated in 1993. Previously, we were known as Majlis Pembangunan Sumber Manusia. We are an agency or department under the Ministry of Human Resources. In 2001, we were corporatized, and ever since we are known as Pembangunan Sumber Manusia Berhad. And we are the sole governor for the Human Resource Development Fund, where under the Act, employers or businesses that described by the Act, they are made compulsory to actually pay levy to the government through HRDF, of which the levy they will be later on using for training purposes. So our vision is actually to ensure that every Malaysian employees are trained based on the needs of the industry and the growth of the employers. Next slide, please. Next slide. Can we go to the next? Yeah. So as what I was sharing just now, we were incorporatized. Please go back to the previous one. This one, yes. Yes, okay. As what I was sharing earlier, we were corporatized in 2001, and ever since, our roles and functions has been expanded by the government to meet the requirement of the country during that particular time. For example, in 2004, our mandate has been expanded to also cover, become the coordinator for small and medium enterprises. And once again, in 2011, we have been mandated to form the National Human Resource Center, where it was meant to actually look into the human resource management of small, medium enterprises. So we have been evolving our roles and responsibility throughout the years. And currently, of course, the focus is to ensure that by the year 2030, Malaysia would have at least 35% of skilled workforce. And to help to accomplish this, can we go to the next slide? We are facilitating the needs of all the employers who registered with HRDF. Currently, we have more than 32,000 registered companies with us, encompassing of more than 2.5 million workers in Malaysia. Of course, if you look at the numbers of the total workforce in Malaysia, roughly around almost 15 million, 2.5 is just a handful number of them. However, these are the group of employees that is attached with the employers that contribute directly to majority of the GDP of the country. Yeah. So throughout the years, we have collected almost 9 billion levy from the companies and disbursed more than 7 billion back to the industry for training purposes. And I would like to say that the industry have been actively training their workers. If you look at the levy utilization of 80%. Yeah. So next, please. So our scope of training and development, when we talk about human capital development, it covers all 4 areas or pillars. We look at those who are incoming to the industry at the pre-employment stage, as well as those who are already in the industry, the in-service, or those who are currently employed. We also look at the needs of those who are at the post-employment, simply because in Malaysia we have a mandatory retirement age. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that they are not able to do work anymore. So we are looking at those group of skill retirees as well. And last but not least is on the learning ecosystem as a whole, because we do believe that training needs to happen. And in order for training to happen, it needs to have a supportive and holistic ecosystem that will be able to make it happen. So these 4 pillars has become our main focus when we talk about upskilling and reskilling of the nation. In the pre-employment, we look into the needs of the school leavers, unemployed graduates that will be coming into the industry. We have various schemes for our registered employers to actually utilize their levy to make this group of future workers to be ready, to be industry ready. So once they join the industry at the employment level, this is where continuous learning or lifelong learning keep on going, regardless of the area of learning. Later on, I'm going to be sharing with all of you that under HRDF we have 35 skill areas, right from the safety and health up to the operational level. So this second pillar enable all the workforce, the workers who are currently attached with employers who pay the levy to go undergo training. Next slide, please. So this is the 35 skill areas that I mentioned earlier. Just for the purpose of this session, I just would like to highlight that safety and health and medical or healthcare is among the 35 skill areas that mostly enrolled by our employers to provide training to their workers. In fact, these two categories of skill areas made up of more than 20% of our training activities in 2019. Yeah, and from financial perspective, HRDF disbursed more than 120 million in 2019 alone for these two skill areas. Yeah. Next, please. When we zoom into in detail on the respective two subsectors, the category of employers under the private hospitals, we would say that on average, employers who are under these subsectors, they train their workers or their employees more than 3 days a year. Yeah, and in terms of the holistic population of workforce, more than 30% of their employees have acquired training in 2019, encompass of 19 million financial assistance. And this industry, they utilize their levy more than 70%. On the other hand, for the health and support services, of course, these subsectors there is many much room for improvement for employers under this category, because if you look at the average training duration per employee is only 3 days, and out of 100%, they trained 20% of their workforce in 2019 with 1.3 million financial assistance. Making their levy utilization slightly lower than 40%. So if compared between these two subsectors, health and support services would have more opportunity for improvement, and we believe in the years to come, they will be gearing up to train their workforce. The next slide, please. These are the 5 skill areas, the top 5 skill areas that normally enroll by employers within these two subsectors. In the private hospitals, medical and healthcare, safety and health stood at number 1 and number 2 most favorable types of training in 2019, whereby in the health support services, medical and healthcare, as well as public relation or customer services, stood as number 1 and number 2 in terms of most enrolled courses. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, I think this is where the interest of the presentation will be, is how HRDF courses or how training can be claimed under HRDF. But first of all, I would like to highlight that all employers who registered with HRDF and pay levy, to a certain extent, majority of their training courses or training expenses can be claimed under HRDF. Yeah, as long as it fulfills the minimum requirement. For example, for a training to be claimable under HRDF, it needs to meet at least minimum 4 hours for SBL, or 7 hours in total for Sbl Has, for example. So other than that, all types of topics, title, and syllabus can be considered for claimable under HRDF. So in more specific, employers who are paying levy and registered with HRDF, as long as they have more than 50% of their levy balance, that enough to cover the expenses of that particular training that they would like to claim from HRDF, to a certain extent, they are still able to claim, although their levy may not be 100% able to cover the entire cost for that particular training. So what we are trying to say here is that they need, of course, there will be some partial claim that we allowed to them to do, but ideally, if they have 100% sufficient levy balance to cover the training, that will be much more straightforward for them to claim. Yeah, and of course, supported by supporting document that are needed for them, like for example, receipts and everything. So next slide, please. These are the next two slides. Will share the most favorable schemes under HRDF. Of course, we have more than 10 schemes on how employers can actually use their levy. But these first two schemes that I'm going to share are the most favorable because they are directly involving training, where the employers and the training providers can actually develop specific modules to meet the needs of the employer. So the first scheme, which is the most flexible scheme, which is the scheme Bantuan Latihan Sbl Scheme, where under this scheme, employers must need first to submit the application for approval. So once the application has been assessed and approval has been granted, then the employer will make payment to the training provider, complete the training, and then submit the claim for the course fee and all other allowable costs, for example, air ticket, meal allowance, and so forth. So under this under this first scheme, the employer can use their levy. Let's go back to the previous slides. Yeah, under this Sbl scheme, employers can use their levy for either in-house program, public program, or even overseas program. Of course, during this COVID period, no face-to-face training is allowed for the moment, especially those involved in the PKPB areas. Yeah, so in the normal time, all form of training face-to-face arrangement, employers may claim under this Sbl scheme. So the next scheme will be our Sbl Has scheme, which is the next slide, please. Now, under this Sbl Has, training providers who are registered with HRDF, they may approach the employers that pay levy to HRDF and sell their programs. Upon completion, we will pay directly to the registered training providers on behalf of the registered employers. So this is the main difference between the Sbl scheme as well as the Sbl Has scheme, where under Sbl Has, the fee for the training fee, HRDF will pay on behalf of the employer directly to the training providers. In terms of application, the flow is all the same with the previous scheme. So I think the next slides. So this is the last slide that I will be sharing. Of course, as what I mentioned earlier, we have more than 10 schemes available for our registered employers. Those who would like to know in more detail all the other schemes, we have all the information in our HRDF portal, hrdf.com.my, and I will be more than happy to respond to any questions that the audience may have after this session. So I'll pass back to KKM. Thank you so much.